Game 14, Leafs, Mammoth. Home ice in Toronto as they continue to play pretty much all games of the beginning of the season here at home at Scotiabank Arena, but the Toronto Maple Leafs do take on the Utah Mammoth, coming off of what was one of the more dramatic, exciting, interesting, I don't know what adjective you want to use to describe whatever the heck it was that we saw on Monday night against the Penguins after we saw the most Jekyll-and-Hyde team of all time. Usually when we talk about Jekyll-and-Hyde, we're talking about this team, one night they look like this, one night they look like that. No. That was like one team for 40 minutes and then a completely different one that came out for the last 20. But we'll see which one of those teams, or if not a hybrid of those two teams, shows up tonight against Utah. And as we get into that, we'll get into our lineups for tonight. Who's in for the Toronto Maple Leafs, because we do have some big news of who's in, who's out, and who's playing with who ahead of this game against Utah, as well as our best bet. I'm Zack Phillips, and today's game preview is a presentation, as always, of Bet365. Let's not waste any time. Let's head on over to the Daily Faceoff and see what we've got for tonight's lineup. First line for your Toronto Maple Leafs. Again, I said this on the morning show here today as we were talking about it, which everybody should watch, Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on the Leaf Station 401 YouTube channel. But I don't love the idea of having to rely on William Nylander being on the first line going into the game. I like it later in the game when you can say, okay, let's stack it. You're not getting it. You need the offense. Nylander, go up, play with those guys. I prefer the waves of attack that you get from Nylander being on line 2, where you go from Nyes and Matthews and somebody to JT and Nylander and somebody, and then you roll through 3, 4, and back to the beginning. Stacking the lines like this, which, it's not like it's a foreign concept. The Edmonton Oilers do this with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and, they want to play together. It's just a matter of, is this best for the team or not? Personally, I'd prefer that they're split up because I think it provides them with more depth of attack and it gives them a little bit better of a wave that they can roll through where they can just go okay, first thing, you got Nyes and Matthews, and then all of a sudden, how do you deal with the next one? And then how do you deal with the next one? Whereas this way, it's kind of like, hey, we get through the first one, second line's not as good as what it could be, and then you're obviously dropping down from there. Regardless, we saw them go together in the third period against Pittsburgh, and if they want to play like that every single shift, every time they go out on the ice from period 1 to period 3, who am I to say no? Because that was some of the most dominant hockey I've seen them play together, probably in years, where it's just taking over shift after shift after shift, and it's those guys going out there together. So, hey, look, I'm fine with it if they're going to play that way. I'd prefer you don't have them like that, but if they're going to play like that, where they go out there and they take over every shift, sure, it is what it is. Down to your second line then, and what that leaves you with is Nic Robertson, JT, and Bobby McMahon, who, by the way, do capitalize on the game-winning goal there the other day, and it is Bobby McMahon who's on the finishing end of that one, thanks to some hard work by Nic Robertson going to the front of the net. Nic Robertson right now showing he wants to be and thinks he can be a top 6 guy. And if he's willing to do that, I've got no problem with them keeping him and having him in the top 6. It's just a matter of consistency for the guy. We've seen him do some of this stuff, but it's not every single night. It's not every single game. And obviously he's not paid $13 million, so you don't expect him to put up points like that every single night. But you got to be on and playing and contributing if you're going to be in the top 6. You can't just fade away into the night. Now, mind you saying that, some of the guys he plays with are victim to doing that, and some of the guys who are paid more than him are victim to doing that. But you want to show that you're a reliable piece, show up every night. Nic Robertson's been really good here now for a few game stretch. Let's see if he can continue that here tonight against Utah. Again, getting another top 6 opportunity. Look, I don't mind this second line, despite what I just said about the depth of attack. I do think they're weaker, and I do think you would prefer to have an upgrade over one of those two guys, Robertson or McMahon, to play alongside Tavares in that top 6 on that second line. But for what it's worth, you've got two guys who work their bags off alongside JT, and that's a guy who also does every single time he puts on his gear, let alone goes out for a game. But then you've got Bobby McMahon, who can be a hustler, a guy who's hard on the forecheck and can score. Nic Robertson, not as big, but also works his bag off 110% every time he goes on the ice and has a little bit of goal scorer in him, more so than Bobby McMahon there, obviously, and can kind of help alleviate some of that pressure off of JT to be the guy who's got to score. Like when you watch Micelli, Tavares, McMahon, that doesn't work because the only guy there, especially if Bobby's not contributing, is JT, who's going to score. Like Nick Alberga joked the other day that Matias Micelli, the empty net goal that he scored, which wasn't really an empty net, it was just a great pass across the ice where he ends up with an empty net because Willie sold shot the whole way. The goalie bit, and all of a sudden Micelli's staring at an empty net. Alberga said basically, Micelli had to force himself to shoot that puck into the empty net because he would rather pass. And I know he's joking, but there's an element of truth. The guy's a pass-first guy. At least this way, you got a scorer with them, or a guy who shoots the puck or likes to shoot the puck in Nic Robertson, and then a guy who can do the dirty work in Bobby McMahon. Down to your third line. Don't love Matias Micelli on here. I would much rather Easton Cowan than Matias Micelli, just because I think Easton Cowan brings more outside of the offense and playmaking. But that said, you get to insulate, if you're going to look at the positives, you get to insulate Micelli with some heavier physical guys. I don't really think he fits the identity of what you're trying to build into your bottom six, and specifically that third line. But playmaker that can go with guys who work hard and put their sticks on the ice and go to the net, sure. Easton Cowan had some success. At least that line looked decent, developing a cycling game with Cowan in that position. Maybe Micelli, being the playmaker he is, having more NHL experience, can help get them going a little bit. But again, don't love the construction or fit of that line. I do like Woll and Joshua playing together. I just think that there's better options potentially on that third line than Matias Micelli. Even at some point, you know what, Domi I don't think is a bad option or idea to go into that third line, but I don't think that they want to play Micelli on the fourth line. And McMahon and Robertson, especially what you saw the other day, they've earned themselves the right, essentially, to go into the top six and not be the fourth line guys. So you end up with a little bit of a difficult spot where it's like, this guy can go here, but then the guy you're going to move out of that spot can't go there, so then he has to displace somebody else. It can get a little bit difficult if you don't have pieces that can just fit anywhere in your lineup, because then you're kind of having to deal with like the consequences of each individual move. Down to your fourth line, Lorentz, Scott Laughton, and Max Domi. Scotty Lots makes his season debut, and this could potentially ruin me for the post-game show, given the fact that I've been such a Scott Laughton defender. If this guy doesn't show up and have 6 goals tonight, there's going to be people booing me off of camera, which I get it because I've been such a strong defender of Scott Laughton and just continuing to push the praises of him and saying, when he comes back, you're going to notice the impact. Let's pump the brakes, because I don't think we see that like to the full degree right away. But I think Scott Laughton coming back helps. Look at that bottom line already. Max Domi not playing center in your bottom 6. That's a win. Nick Waugh getting to go up full-time into the third line center position. Win. The drop-off from Waugh to whoever was playing down there, whether it was Domi, Yarncroke, Lorentz, whoever was playing as your 4C or just in that fourth line, it's better now. Like, it just automatically improves that. Oh, and by the way, the identity you're talking about of being big, forechecking hard, finishing hits, like all of that, Scott Laughton brings to that fourth line. So just continuing to complete and transform the identity of this group, Scott Laughton, just continues to help that. I'm excited about him being back. I don't think he comes back and is at like full capacity of what he can do to make an impact here, but being in the room, going on the ice, being on the bench, having a voice, showing by example, I think makes a difference with these guys. So those are your forward lines for tonight's game. Like some of it, like Scott Laughton being back, like Steven Lorentz jumping back in here, because I think him and Laughton found some chemistry as well. Which, by the way, another quick note on this, you want to move pieces around. Maybe Domi goes up to the third line, Micelli comes out, Easton Cowan goes into the fourth line, and then he plays with Laughton and Lorentz, who he had success with in the preseason. So if you were like asking, who do you take Micelli out for and put in, maybe that's the solution. But asterisk on that, I think that Micelli is in here tonight because of who they're playing. His former team in Utah, and I think Craig Berube is trying to do right by the player. Those are your forward lines for tonight's game. Down to your defensive pairings, you're going to remain the same for what we had on Monday against Pittsburgh. That would be Morgan Rielly, Brandon Carlo as your first pair, Simone Benoit, Jake McCabe as your second pair, and then your third line is Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Philippe Myers for your third pair there. So those are your defensive pairings for tonight's game. Just quick note here on goaltending. Anthony Stolarz obviously going to go for the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight. Seems to make sense, just given the fact that I think that he was good against Pittsburgh on Monday. You know, they got behind in the third period. You watched, he made some really big saves that kind of just gave them an opportunity to stay in that one and not get their crap pumped. It could have gotten away from them if he doesn't make a couple big saves. Even at 4-0, 4-1, it could have become like he kept it at 3. He kept that number at 3, and they were able to go from 3-0 to 3-3 to 4-3. Whereas if he doesn't make some of those saves, you're down 4-0, you're down 4-1, and that thing's could potentially be game over. He made some big saves. Also, the other reason I bring this up and say I don't mind him going, hearing here, and as you saw on the screen over on Daily Faceoff, an article out that we could be nearing the return of Joseph Woll. If his return is in sight, playing Stolarz a little bit more, I don't think is that big of a deal, because you're like, hey, your not replacement, your backup is here soon. The guy to take some of this load off of you, he's coming back soon. So don't worry about going. Don't worry about taking on this stretch. As long as you feel healthy, you feel good, and the sports science team is like, hey, we're not risking injury, then I don't really care. Like, play him. Woll can come back. Woll can get a bunch of game action. Woll can get into the rhythm of things here with the big club if he is nearing a return. So that's fine by me. Down to your power play units for tonight, we do see one significant change-ish, I should say. Ekman-Larsson jumps on the first power play unit in place of Morgan Rielly. Morgan Rielly moves to your second unit, and then here on your first, you're going to have Nyes, Tavares, Nylander, and Matthews together. Second unit is Nick Waugh, Max Domi, Matthias Micelli, Nic Robertson, and Morgan Rielly. Look, simple to the point. Power play's got to be better. I don't care who's on it. I don't care what they run out. I don't care what the system is. I don't care, quite frankly. It just has to be better. You can't be ranked 30th in the NHL at a 12.1% power play, a full 1.5% behind the team in front of you, which is the Calgary Flames, who are a not so great team so far to start this season. You can't be that far behind them, especially when you have Nylander, Matthews, Tavares out there together, let alone Matthew Nyes, Ekman-Larsson, Morgan Rielly. I don't care who's around you. And, I know that there's been a lot made about the guy that was on the power play last year who's not here anymore. Through 13 games, the power play is better this year than what it was last year. So that excuse, quite frankly, is gone. And by the way, the power play last year and for like the last 9 years has really had some struggles and looked the same. They've relied upon having more skill than the other team in a lot of it to get by. And then when they do during the regular season, it's like, well, they've got more skill, but you look at the other team and they're not scouting your power play and pregame your power play the same way that they are in the playoffs. They probably loosely look at it and say, here's what to expect, but they're not breaking it down like step by step the way they are in the playoffs, which is, by the way, where we see the power play disappear the most. There's a lack of urgency, a lack of drive and simplicity to the power play that this group needs, that they just kind of seem to not want to take part in right now. And it's going to bite them in the ass. So much like how they had to learn how to do it at 5-on-5, like we saw in the game on Monday, where they changed from the first 2 periods to the third period, you're going to have to learn to do that similar situation on the power play as well. Let's now get to our best bet here for the night. Our best bet is a presentation of Bet365. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. Use the code NATION. That's NATION, code NATION, NATION at Bet365. You must be 19 or older, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. All right, best bets on the year. I'm just going to do a little tire pump, for people who are watching, listening, however you're consuming this, and you're wondering, should I or should I not be following this guy? If you've been following every single bet, all 20 bets through the first 13 games of the season that we've given out here, and you've followed the unit sizing and you've betted at Bet365, you are currently up on the year $350 in profit. You have profited $350. That would be 3.5 units on the season that we are currently up. So get those bets in. Follow along with what we're doing here on the show. We're winning some money here so far, and we got another one for you here tonight. This is going to be our 21st bet of the season, and it's a long shot, but it's a fun one. So jumping on over to Bet365, seeing what we've got for tonight's game. You're currently looking at the Mammoth plus 130. The Maple Leafs are minus 155. A total in this one of 6.5. Minus 105 to the over. Minus 115 to the under, but that's not where we're going for tonight's best bet. We are jumping to the goal scorers tab. Look, there wasn't anything tonight that stood out to me as like loving it that I was said, hey, I've got to go with this. William Nylander in the last game on Monday. I loved the over 2.5 shots on goal. 3+ shots on goal for Nylander at minus 105. I loved. We went a full unit on that one. Minus 105, we bet $105, and it profited us $100 on the night, bringing our total up to the $350. This one, I couldn't find anything that really jumped out to me, but there was one that I did like. Because it's a long shot, we're going to take it a little bit smaller on the unit size, a little bit smaller on the money. You go to your goal scores, slide down a little bit until you get to some of the bigger plus odds. And then we are going to find ourselves looking at a Scott Laughton anytime goal at plus 900. That one we're going to bet a fifth of a unit on. That's $20, a fifth of a unit on Scott Laughton anytime goal. It profits us here tonight, $180. You can't find this number at any other sports book. You can only get it at Bet365, the plus 900. We're going to go $20 on this one. Profits you $180. It's also a little bit of a fun one. He comes back, the return. Scotty Laughton had a great start to the year in the preseason, that is. Never got to play in the regular season because of an injury. Finally, he returns in game 14. I've been big up in this guy. I'm putting my money where my mouth is and saying Scott Laughton returns tonight, and everyone looks around and goes, oh shit, we were missing this guy. Scotty Laughton, anytime goal. At a smaller number because it's a big plus money. But Scott Laughton, anytime goal, plus 900 is tonight's best bet. Thank you all for watching here today. Appreciate it as always. If you enjoyed this, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe here to the channel, Leaf Station 401, right here on YouTube. Potentially a Jay Rosehill sighting on Leafs Morning Take tomorrow from a new spot. Potential. But you got a couple things until then. Tonight's Leafs game against the Mammoth, and then myself right here on this channel for another edition of Leaf Station After Dark following tonight's final buzzer. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys following the game. Until then, keep Leafin'. For more content just like this, including game previews, post-game live shows, Leafs Morning Take Monday through Friday with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with special guests, as well as instant reaction videos, make sure to be subscribed here to the Leafs Nation YouTube channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss anything, and drop a like.